Indianapolis this week. All eyes on Indiana. How the Hoosier State could play a huge role in who wins the White House as the campaigns quickly try to woo your vote.
We're going to stay organized and focused.
The impact on November. We go one-on-one with the chair of Indiana's Democratic Party to talk about Clinton versus Sanders and whether a contested Republican convention helps Indiana Democrats. And down to the wire, the shift in the GOP Senate race between Todd Young and Marlin Stutzman. Our insiders weigh in.
From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Welcome to Indianapolis This Week, everyone. I'm Jason Fechner. Republican or Democrat, a historic primary is ahead right here in Indiana just 16 days from today. And we invite you to join the conversation with us over the next half hour on Twitter at our official account at Indy This Week. We'll get to the Republican race in just a second, but first, the most fired up debate between the Democratic candidates so far. This past Thursday night, Brooklyn, both candidates going after each other ahead of the New York primary this Tuesday. 291 Democratic delegates up for grabs. 5 more primaries a week from Tuesday, and then Indiana stands alone on May 3rd. Let's bring in John Zodi, the chair of Indiana's Democratic Party. John, thanks so much for being here.
Too, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the presidential race right now. The debate this week between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders got a little bit heated out there. His supporters are obviously passionate. The math, though, at this point, really not in his favor. Is he doing more harm than good to the Democratic Party at this point?
No, I don't think so. The debate got a little tense. We're at the point in the campaign where that happens, but we're seeing that energy on both sides. I was pleased to see that the discussion was about substantive issues. They were talking about their records, and that's good to see our Democratic candidates doing that. The primary is headed this way, and I think that energy is great for our election here in Indiana coming up.
Is he making her a better candidate come November?
Well, I think he's talking about issues. She's talking about issues. They're making each other better candidates, and so their supporters are very passionate on the ground here, and so as that energy makes its way here, I think it's a great thing.
If the campaign remains combative between them going forward, does that do more harm to the Democratic Party, or will there be enough of a cooling off and a healing period before November if his supporters are so passionate, her supporters are so passionate, and they split either way, however things shake out?
Well, what we need is passion. And I think once the primary is finished and we have our nominee, I think whether there's a cooling off period or not, I think people will still be energized because you're seeing people get involved. You're seeing, I've heard some people have not been involved before and they're getting involved this year. And so anytime that happens, it's good at the end of the day.
The Indiana primary on both the Democratic and Republican side set to play a huge role when we get to May 3rd.
That's right.
What should we expect from both of those candidates, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, now over the next couple of weeks as things really ramp up here in the Hoosier State?
Well, as you mentioned, they're both having offices set up. They're both hiring staff. We've been in touch with both campaigns and we'll continue to do so. The state Democratic Party needs to serve as a good resource. If somebody wants to get involved, they need to come to us and say, how do I do that, if they don't know how to do it? And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure everyone has the information they need to vote. And the presidential campaigns will put an extra layer on top of that and reminding people that there's an election and where they vote and how they vote. I think that preparation only helps everybody running here in Indiana because it reminds more people that there's an election.
What are your thoughts so far, jumping across the aisle, on the state of the Republican Party and the Republican presidential primary as it continues to play out?
Well, I think the Republican Party is in panic mode. They have Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and John Kasich, and we're still talking less than 100 days from their convention. We're still talking about who else there might be out there. They are not settled on one of those folks. There are a lot of people who are, there's this anti-Trump movement out there that we're seeing, and so it's very unsettled. And so less than 100 days from their convention, when they're still talking about whether the Speaker of the House or there's this other person out there that might be a better nominee, I think that shows that they're in trouble.
What is the state of that Republican presidential primary and the possibility of a contested convention? What could that mean to Democrats in Indiana come November?
Well, we're going to stay focused and organized. I think leading into our convention, we may have a clear nominee. We're heading toward our convention in a very organized way. We know it's going to be Hillary Clinton or it's going to be Bernie Sanders. Republicans don't know that, and so we're going to stay organized and focused. The campaigns are doing that. They're both organized. They're both focused. Our candidates here the same way. John Gregg is doing a great job. Barron Hill is doing a great job for the race for U.S. Senate. We're just going to stay organized, and I think that'll help us win in November.
A poll out this week from Fox News showed that John Kasich could beat Hillary Clinton by 9 points in November. She would beat Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders would beat all 3 of them. In your perfect world, regardless of how it happens, who would be the perfect Republican nominee for either candidate to go against come November?
Well, I'm a terrible prognosticator, so I'm just going to tell you that I think we're an elected Democratic president. I think either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders would beat any of the three. It doesn't look like John Kasich has a mathematical path to the nomination, so we're seeing a lot of attention focused on Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, so we'll see where it goes.
Let's talk about the race for governor now. Your thoughts on John Gregg's campaign so far?
John's doing a great job. We found out on Friday that he outraised the governor by a few $100,000, and the governor only has his numbers because he's gotten a $1.5 million bailout from the Republican Governors Association. So without that, John would have outraised the governor by quite a bit. In addition to that, John has been traveling the state. He's put out 5 proposals about how we can do better here in Indiana, and Mike Pence is running on a weak record for his second term as governor.
Can Gregg win this time?
Absolutely, and he will win.
Bit of a trick question here. If John Gregg wins in November, is it because John Gregg won or because Mike Pence lost support, lost undecideds?
Well, the governor has managed in just under 4 years to put our 2 most coveted reputations in jeopardy, the Crossroads of America and Hoosier Hospitality. We've been talking about those things. We've been talking about what the governor has done to compromise the well-being of Indiana. Time and again, he will choose his ideology over what's best for the people of Indiana. At the same time, John Gregg has been traveling the state, talking about what he would do as governor. And so this race is going to be about Mike Pence's record as governor, but it's also going to be about John Gregg talking about what he's going to do to move the state forward with infrastructure, with education, with protecting us and make sure everyone's protected under law. The governor has embarrassed us. He signed an unnecessary law last year, and we're certainly going to be talking about those things, but John's going to be running on how we can do better here in Indiana.
If John Gregg doesn't win in November, does the Democratic Party here in Indiana need to look at any policy position changes going forward?
I don't know. I'm not going to go that far. I think John's going to win, and that's the goal we're headed toward.
On to the Senate race now. The primary race between Todd Young, Marlin Stutzman, obviously very contested, very heated getting up to the primary. Does that help Barron Hill and his chances come November?
Well, I think it does. Anytime there's a primary that's where people are spending money and going after each other, and you have a solid candidate like Barron Hill on the other side, he is running toward November, making sure that he's talking about what he needs to talk about in the Senate race, while Young and Stutzman try to decide who the most conservative person in the race is. And so I think Barron's running a strong campaign. It's going to get stronger, and we'll see what happens here in a few weeks on May 3rd. John
Zodi, we appreciate your time here this
Thanks
morning.
a lot. Great to be here.
Great to see you as always.
You too.
And 1 week ago, we welcomed the state's Republican Party chairman, Jeff Cardwell, to the show. You can watch our entire interview with him right now on our Indianapolis This Week Facebook page. Now, after a quick break here, a primary fight. The new aggressive ads just rolled out as Marlin Stutzman and Todd Young battle to try to become Indiana's next senator. That's next only on Indianapolis This Week on RTV6. Back, we turn our attention now to what appears to be a too-close-to-call Senate race between Republicans Marlin Stutzman and Todd Young. Stutzman's worked to peg Young as the establishment candidate. Young argues he's the true conservative, ready to stand up to President Obama's policies. Now new ads are on the airwaves and online with just 2 weeks to go, and the candidates themselves are about to go face-to-face in a critical debate. Our Katie Hines weighs in.
To put Congressman Marlin Stutzman and Todd Young on the same stage together has only happened once during this campaign. Both candidates will meet for a 1-hour debate here in Indianapolis tomorrow night. And that debate between the 2 Republican candidates comes within 72 hours of both campaigns going negative.
He pocketed nearly $1 million worth of the same taxpayer subsidies he claims to oppose.
Young does as he's told. He voted to raise the debt limit over $2 trillion.
It's a glimpse into the competitiveness of this tight race in the final weeks before the May 3rd primary. Both Stutzman and Young are billing themselves as pro-life conservatives. Young says the conversation needs to center around policies that give every Hoosier the chance to get a quality education and a good-paying job. Stutzman is likely to paint himself as a Washington outsider after opposing John Boehner's re-election as Speaker last year. You can expect to hear pledges from both to repeal the Affordable Care Act, preserve the Second Amendment, and protect the unborn. Indiana Right to Life endorsed both candidates this week. We're also seeing big money being poured into this race. That means more ads in the next 2 weeks. Jason.
Thank you so much, Katie. And RTV6 will have live coverage of the Senate debate tomorrow. You can watch it live at 7 p.m. right here on RTV6. Plus, You can join our insiders on Facebook Live. Before it begins, we're going to have a full recap and reaction right afterwards as well through the RTV6 app. But why wait until Monday evening to hang out with our insiders? You can do it right now. Kip 2 for the Democrats, Marcus Barlow for the Republicans. Marcus, let's start with you. 2 weeks ago in this Republican race, those ads relatively combative against each other. Where does that race stand right now?
You know, I think that if you just watch if you're trying to read the tea leaves, it looks like Todd Young, whether it's his fundraising or his statewide organization, he seems to be in the driver's seat right now. And Marlin Stutzman is, I think we saw in that last ad, trying to pull out all the stops to try to build up on this anti-establishment fervor that he sees happening nationally, and hopefully he can capitalize on it.
The state of that race, so how does that impact Barron Hill come November?
Well, I think Barron wants to run against Marlin Stutzman, I think, because Marlin is seen as more of an extreme right-winger. It's been an interesting primary, in my judgment, to watch two guys from Congress trying to act like neither of them are from Congress. Neither of them are an insider. I think Marlin, though, is probably more successful at that being truthful, because he has taken on his own Republican leadership in Congress. So I think he can say that with more truthfulness than Todd. Todd, I think, has tried to work with his leadership and on occasion work with the president. So,
yeah, but at the same time, I mean, Marlin has had a fundraiser with John Boehner.
Sure.
He said he'd vote for.
No, I was saying on balance. I would say that on balance, it's probably more truthful for Stutzman to say he's an outsider, and because of that, I think Indiana is a center-right state, and I think if a more extreme person is nominated, then Barron Hill has a better chance of winning.
Let's quickly talk about the governor's race now. The report out Friday that John Gregg has outraised Mike Pence in the first quarter, about $1.9 million to $1.5, give or take. What does that say about the state of that race, Marcus?
Well, I don't think it says much about the state of the race. I don't think one quarter does.
And you knew that he wouldn't. You knew he would.
1 quarter does an election make.
All right. Well, 2 out of the last 3 quarters he's outraised. Does that make a difference?
Over the last year, Mike Pence has outraised John Gregg, and John Gregg still runs into the problems of what's he going to run on? What's his message going to be? I'm completely different than I was a year ago. I mean,
I think that
I take it you take a different spin on it. Kid.
Yeah, it's a much difference. 2 out of the last 3 quarters, those of us who are close to it, I know he's having to spin on behalf of his candidate, but the facts are that an incumbent governor almost always outraises a challenger unless he's in deep trouble, and I think it shows that Mike Pence is in deep trouble. I think Marcus knows it, and I know it, and then I hope your viewers understand it as well. In a gubernatorial race, early money, when you see it going this way, that means the momentum's on somebody else's side, and I think there's no doubt about it. And in addition to that, the governor had to be bailed out by the Republican Governors Association on the last day of the filing deadline for $500,000. Otherwise, it would have been a 2-to-1.
That's no more than
change.
The union bailouts John Gregg has been getting in the past 2 quarters.
It's a big difference.
You two stay right here. Marcus Barlow, Kip 2. Much more to come. The delegate math still to come here, where things stand ahead of New York and what Hoosier. Welcome back to Indianapolis this week. Once New York is out of the way on Tuesday, expect to see all 5 remaining presidential candidates making stops here in Indiana, of course, ahead of May 3rd. Most of the campaigns now have offices open in Indiana, including this one in Carmel for Donald Trump's campaign. The GOP frontrunner opened 3 offices in Indiana this week. Meanwhile, a new phone bank is open in Indianapolis on 59th Street for Senator Ted Cruz. John Kasich has also started recruiting Hoosier volunteers. Their Democratic counterparts have both opened their own offices here in Indianapolis. Indiana's Republican primary setting up, of course, to be a key one, and here's what's at stake now. 57 total delegates. 30 of those delegates will go to the person who wins the statewide vote on May 3rd. Add to that 3 delegates going to the winner in each of Indiana's 9 congressional districts. On Thursday this past week, the state Republican Party released the full list of those delegates, a list that includes the Lieutenant Governor, Indiana's Secretary of State, Congressman Todd Rokita, the chairman of Donald Trump's Indiana campaign, Rex Early, and a member of the RNC who has pledged to fight Trump's nomination with any means available. Indiana's delegates are only bound to vote for the winner of the primary vote on the convention's first ballot, of course, according to the party's rules. Marcus and Kip are back now as we shift our focus to the presidential race. What a race it's been, what a race it will be here over the next couple of weeks in Indiana. Marcus, let's start with the delegates. Any surprises on that list?
No, I don't think there are any surprises for anyone that's been paying attention.
And someone like Congressman Rokita, he gets there to the convention, and let's say that it goes to a second ballot. What's he bound to at that point? He's not bound to anything, so where does he take his vote?
He's not, and I think that as we see this play out. We're going to see a lot of campaigning at the convention, which is something I haven't seen in my lifetime. So it should be pretty exciting.
It could be very exciting, but you introduced the segment by saying Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. I think that's got to send a shiver up my friend Marcus's spine to know that the frontrunner, the potential nominee of the Republican Party, is a guy named Donald Trump. Would you have imagined that 2 years ago?
I wouldn't have, but I'm totally relaxed.
He was laid back during the commercial break, literally chilling.
Laid back. 65% of Republicans that have come out and voted in the primary have not voted for Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has to win on the first ballot, or else I don't think Donald Trump's going to be our nominee.
Let's talk about this poll from Fox News out this week saying that John Kasich would beat Hillary Clinton by 9 points in November. She, of course, would beat Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders, though, would beat all three of them. Yeah. What does that say about the state of the Democratic race?
I think that it's going to be a close race if John Kasich and Hillary Clinton are the two nominees. I don't think that's very likely at all. I think it's going to be Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton's going to be the winner.
Does Kasich take a poll number like that, though, to the base and say, look at what we could potentially do here?
I think when you start doing that convention campaigning, that plays into it. But have we forgotten that the Democrat frontrunner is still under federal investigation? I mean, Democrats right now are choosing between a socialist and someone under federal investigation. I think all of the Donald Trump stuff has done is distract us from really, if I was a Democrat, what I would be worried about.
Are you worried about that?
I'm not in the least bit. I'm not. I mean, she's been investigated more than any public official in history, and they've never come up with a single thing. This is an investigation that is largely at behest of the Republican Party. Trey Gowdy and those guys have done the Benghazi, this, that, and the other thing. They just keep making things up.
This is the Obama Justice Department.
An investigation doesn't mean that someone's done anything wrong. It's an investigation.
But we know the things we know about the email servers, and that's a story that hasn't really
I'd rather have Hillary Clinton on the top of my ticket than Donald Trump, who is an entertainment mogul or whatever the hell he is.
Donald Trump this past week going hard now against the Republican Party over what had happened in Colorado and things going forward. Can he mend those fences?
He looks like a whiner to me. I mean, it's amazing. Here's a guy who
plays himself as a tough guy.
Yeah, he looks like he's whining. The rules are the rules. The people are following the rules. There's nobody breaking any rules.
Right.
And he's sitting there whining about the rules. I mean, I thought he was a winner.
Right, and I hate to agree with Kip, but I think he's completely correct. I think that what we see him doing in Indiana, though, is getting out early, trying to learn the rules to make sure that he doesn't get caught showing the weaknesses of his organization like he did in Colorado.
If he doesn't have 1237 over the next few months now, before we get to the convention, he gets to the 1100, he's kind of made that argument that majority rules at that point. Does majority rule for Donald Trump? Can anyone really pull that nomination away from him at the convention if he's got the majority and he's up by that much?
At this point, I don't think it matters much. I think the party would be so divided. If he gets it, the party stays divided. If he gets denied it, the party stays divided. They're in a very bad place.
We've got some updated delegate counts. We've got a couple graphics here for the Democrats, of course. Hillary Clinton now at 1758 to Bernie Sanders 1069. That's got the super delegates in there, of course. The goal there 2383. On the Republican side, Trump at 743 to Ted Cruz at 545, John Kasich at 143. How much different is this race for the Democrats if the superdelegates aren't a part of it?
Well, Hillary's got to lead either way. Obviously,
but not by that much.
Yeah, it's my belief that our superdelegate process will follow the will of the people. Just almost all of those people are either elected officials or party officials, and they're going to do, 99 times out of 100, they're going to do what the constituents have sort of put out there. So I don't pay that much attention because they are free agents. They can do whatever they want, and they're going to follow the will most likely.
I mean, it's a completely different system than we have, so I don't really want to
two foreign languages
coming together. All of their insiders deciding their
Let's talk about the Democratic debate on Thursday. A relatively combative debate there between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Sanders has to know at this point that the math is not in his favor. What does he win by getting more combative with Clinton during the debate?
Well, I think Senator Clinton has a must-win state Tuesday. She has to win New York. If she doesn't win New York, then she's in a lot more trouble than anybody anticipated her to be. And so I think Bernie was really trying to make it a big play there in New York, and he expressed his New York personality. I think both of them did, a little bit more combative. And look, they were arguing about issues, though. And I think that's different than the insults that were hurled back and forth in every Republican debate that we watched.
Those are all entertaining to watch.
But I think we would both have to agree that both parties are divided. I mean, each of these primaries has been heated. Each of these primaries have supporters for each of the candidates that are hardcore involved with their candidate. But I think that after both conventions, I fully expect both parties to unite.
We'll see what happens at the conventions. We'll see what happens in New York on Tuesday, and of course, Indiana on May 3rd. Our thanks to Marcus and Kip here. And of course, you can follow them on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter, our official Twitter account at Indy This Week for news and updates every day of the week. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. It has been a beautiful weekend for baseball so far. We're so glad baseball's back in Indy this summer as the Indians hosted their home opener this week. If you can't make it out to Victory Field today, fear not. We're broadcasting all the home games from there on HTSN all season long. Now later today, don't boo too loudly. Yours truly is going to be out there to throw the first pitch and then sing the 7th inning stretch as well. Oh, look at those dogs. So if you're headed to the ballpark today, do me a favor. Make sure to bring those earplugs with you. Thanks so much for joining us here on Indianapolis This Week. For Rafael Sanchez, Katie Hines, and our entire team, have a fantastic Sunday, everybody.